The morning sunlight filtered through the tall, arched windows of the city courtroom, casting long, golden streaks across the polished wooden floors. The air was heavy with tension, a mixture of anxiety, anticipation, and quiet curiosity. Lawyers shuffled papers and whispered hurriedly to one another while bailiffs moved back and forth, straightening chairs and reminding spectators to remain seated. The judge, a stern yet fair woman with a sharp eye for detail, sat poised behind the bench, her robes flowing and immaculate, scanning the room with a practiced vigilance. Today's hearing was expected to be routine, yet there was an undercurrent of uncertainty that nobody could explain, an inexplicable sense that something extraordinary was about to unfold. Among the crowd, tucked securely on her mother's lap, was a 3-year-old with wide, observant eyes that seemed far older than her age. Her small, delicate hands fidgeted nervously with the hem of her dress, though she seemed surprisingly composed for someone so young in such a formal, intimidating environment. His hair was neatly tied in a ponytail, but a few wispy strands had escaped, brushing softly against her forehead. Her mother, equally nervous, whispered quiet reassurances, stroking his hair gently. "It's going to be fine, sweetheart," she murmured. His gaze was fixed not on her mother, but on the large, golden-brown dog sitting obediently by her side. Max, the family's police dog, was a commanding presence even in stillness. His sleek coat gleamed under the sunlight, and his deep, intelligent eyes scanned the room with a mixture of curiosity and trained alertness. Max had been with for over a year, part of a specialized program pairing children with trained K-9 officers for both companionship and assistance in public safety situations. Though he was fully trained to respond to professional commands, his bond with was different. To anyone else, he was a disciplined, obedient dog. But to Max was a partner, capable of understanding her silent signals in ways that left even seasoned officers astonished. The courtroom doors creaked open, and more people filed in, spectators curious about the hearing, reporters armed with cameras and notebooks, and additional law enforcement officers preparing for the session. The hum of murmured conversations filled the air, blending with the subtle rustle of papers and the occasional squeak of polished shoes against the hardwood floor. Shifted slightly on her mother's lap, pressing her tiny hand against Max's side, feeling the reassuring warmth of his body. Her eyes, large and perceptive, followed the movements of the lawyers and officers. She had been to courtrooms before with her mother, but something about today felt different. She could sense the tension in the room, the weight of decisions that could affect lives, and the quiet urgency in the movements of those around her. Max's ears twitched at the sound of the judge's gavel striking the wooden block, signaling the start of proceedings. The murmur of the audience dropped into a hush. Sensing the moment gave a subtle flick of her hand, barely noticeable to Max. It was the first silent signal of the day, a small, precise gesture that only Max could interpret. His muscles tensed, and he shifted slightly, eyes fixed on her. To the casual observer, it was nothing more than a minor adjustment. But to those who understood their connection, it was the beginning of an extraordinary display of communication and teamwork. The judge cleared her throat, her voice calm but authoritative. "We are here today to address the matter before this court," she began, scanning the room with an unflinching gaze. Lawyers straightened in their seats, and the lead prosecutor adjusted his glasses as he prepared to speak. His mother whispered softly, trying to calm the little girl but barely noticed. Her focus was entirely on Max. She lifted her hand slightly again, signaling him in a subtle arc. Max responded with perfect precision, nudging his head toward a bag on the floor that had been overlooked by everyone in the courtroom. The lawyer mid-sentence paused as Max's movement caught his eye. "Excuse me," he said cautiously, frowning. The spectators turned toward the dog, curiosity piqued. "Is that a dog?" murmured someone in the back row. The judge raised an eyebrow, her lips pursed in curiosity. She had seen Max before, he was part of the K-9 unit, but even she couldn't predict the unusual role he was about to play. His mother held her breath, both proud and apprehensive. She had trained her daughter and Max together, knowing they shared a bond unlike any other. But the intensity of a courtroom was a different challenge entirely. Max moved slowly, deliberately, following his gestures with unwavering focus. He nudged the bag slightly, then sat back on his haunches, glancing up at for confirmation. Nodded imperceptibly, her small face calm and determined. The audience, initially unaware, now began to notice the unusual interaction. Whispers spread quickly. Some spectators exchanged doubtful looks, assuming the dog was merely restless. Others leaned forward, intrigued by the subtle coordination between child and dog. The courtroom had begun to shift from its typical solemnity to a tense curiosity. The judge, noticing the murmurs, tapped her gavel lightly. "Order in the courtroom," she commanded, her voice cutting through the growing chatter. All eyes turned to her, but the focus soon returned to Max. The child's subtle hand signals guided Max toward the bag again, and this time he pawed at it lightly, revealing a small document hidden within. Gasps echoed softly through the audience. Lawyers leaned closer, squinting at the discovery. The prosecutor froze, stunned by the dog's unexpected behavior. Meanwhile, remained composed, as if this were simply another game between her and Max. His mother reached over to adjust the little girl's dress, but his eyes never left Max. She whispered nothing, made no sound, yet her silent communication was clear and deliberate. The crowd, sensing the unusual dynamic, grew more attentive. Reporters jotted notes furiously, cameras trained on the girl and her dog. Officers whispered among themselves, astonished at the level of discipline and understanding between the pair. Even the judge, usually composed and unflappable, leaned forward, curiosity and admiration lighting her features. It was not every day that a 3-year-old held the attention of an entire courtroom with nothing but gestures and a silent connection with her dog. As the lawyer cleared his throat and tried to regain composure, Max returned to his position beside, waiting for the next subtle command. His tiny fingers twitched slightly, signaling him again. She had noticed something others had missed, a small clue in the room that could prove important. Max responded instantly, nudging toward a small envelope tucked beneath a bench. The audience leaned in, disbelief mixing with awe. The courtroom, once routine and predictable, had transformed into a stage for something extraordinary, a demonstration of intelligence, trust, and an unspoken bond that expectations. His mother squeezed her hand gently, pride shining in her eyes. She knew how capable her daughter was, but watching the courtroom react was a different experience altogether. The judge adjusted her glasses, her expression shifting from curiosity to amazement. Lawyers whispered urgently, trying to process the implications. Even seasoned officers stood silently, recognizing the rare occurrence they were witnessing. Tiny and unassuming, held the power to guide a trained police dog with nothing more than gestures, intuition, and unwavering trust. As the morning wore on, the tension in the courtroom mounted. Spectators remained rapt, aware that something remarkable was unfolding before them. And Max, calm yet alert, continued their silent dialogue, each subtle movement precise and deliberate. The judge watched, fascinated, as the pair revealed small details that could change the course of the hearing. It was a performance without words, a silent symphony of coordination and understanding. The courtroom had become a theater of wonder, centered on the extraordinary bond between a little girl and her loyal companion. By the time the prosecutor attempted to proceed with the presentation of evidence, the focus had shifted entirely. Small hand signals and Max's precise responses had captivated every eye in the room. The initial routine hearing had transformed into an unexpected display of intuition and teamwork. Every gesture, every nudge, and every glance between the girl and her dog carried weight. It was clear. This was not mere coincidence. The courtroom had witnessed the calm before a storm, an extraordinary beginning that promised to leave everyone, from the judge to the last spectator, stunned and inspired by the tiny girl who commanded attention without uttering a single word. The courtroom had settled into an uneasy quiet, but tension still clung to the polished walls like a persistent fog. Small hand twitched subtly, guiding Max with a series of precise, silent gestures. No one but the dog seemed to understand the tiny motions. Max responded with perfect obedience, his trained instincts blending seamlessly with the unique understanding he shared with. To the casual observer, it might have seemed like coincidence, but those who looked closely could see the unmistakable intelligence behind every movement. Eyes, wide and sparkling, tracked every reaction in the room. She knew what needed to be revealed, and Max trusted her completely. The lawyer presenting the case continued, speaking quickly to cover his growing unease. "As I was saying," he said, glancing down at his notes, "the evidence clearly shows a breach of protocol in the handling of the case files." His voice, meant to command attention, seemed drowned out by the silent drama unfolding between child and dog. Max shifted slightly on signal, inching toward a seemingly ordinary briefcase lying under the table. He nudged it with his nose, careful, deliberate, and precise. The motion was subtle, but it caught the eye of a few sharp observers in the courtroom. A murmur spread quickly. The bailiff leaned in slightly, whispering to a nearby officer, "Is that supposed to happen?" The officer shook his head, unable to comprehend the coordination he was witnessing. The judge, eyes narrowing in curiosity, leaned forward on her bench, her gavel momentarily forgotten. Smother held her breath, gripping the little girl's hand gently. She had trained and Max together for moments like this, but the stakes of a courtroom were far higher than anything they had practiced before. Still, his calm confidence never wavered. Max pawed at the briefcase again, careful not to make noise. Raised her hand slightly, and he responded immediately, nudging it open just enough for a corner of a document to peek out. The lawyers, initially focused on their own agendas, noticed the movement and paused. "Is that the evidence?" the prosecutor asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. He stood slowly, his gaze fixed on the child and her dog. Spectators whispered among themselves, astonished at what they were seeing. A 3-year-old girl had just guided a trained police dog to uncover something vital in the midst of a formal court hearing. Smother's heart raced. She could see the tiny flicker of concentration on her daughter's face, the way she measured each movement to ensure Max followed perfectly. The little girl's hand twitched again, signaling Max to retrieve the document fully. Max obeyed flawlessly, lifting the paper with his mouth and gently placing it on the judge's bench. Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge, eyes wide, picked up the document, examining it carefully. The handwriting, the notations, and the sealed stamp indicated something crucial, something that had been overlooked by the most experienced professionals in the room. The courtroom had shifted dramatically. What began as a routine case was now dominated by Max. Lawyers leaned forward, whispering urgently among themselves. Officers exchanged amazed glances, unable to hide their astonishment. The spectators' murmurs grew into audible astonishment, the kind of disbelief reserved for miracles or unbelievable feats. Remained calm, serene even, as if guiding Max in this extraordinary task was perfectly ordinary. She whispered nothing. She didn't need to. Her silent communication with Max was precise, flawless, and to everyone watching, inexplicably powerful. The judge adjusted her glasses and studied closely. "Young lady," she said softly, though her voice carried authority, "are you aware of what you have just done?" Nodded faintly, her lips pressed together in concentration. Max sat patiently, tail resting on the floor, eyes focused on the girl, awaiting further instructions. The courtroom was silent, all attention fixed on the improbable pair. The weight of the moment was tangible. Every eye followed Snek's subtle gesture, anticipating what might happen next. Small fingers twitched again. Max moved swiftly, heading toward another overlooked item near the witness stand, a folder containing critical notes that could alter the entire perspective of the case. The audience watched, holding their collective breath. The lawyer who had been presenting evidence looked dumbfounded, realizing that a child and her dog were now outperforming the most skilled courtroom professionals. Officers whispered in awe, "I've never seen a K-9 work like this with a child." The prosecutor's face was pale. He had not expected that a 3-year-old could uncover evidence that had been hidden for months. As Max nudged the folder toward, she tapped his head lightly, signaling him to wait. She scanned the room with astonishing focus, noting who was paying attention, who was distracted, and how the movement of others might affect her silent communication. The courtroom, tense and alert, seemed to pulse with energy. Every subtle gesture from caused Max to react instantly, his actions precise, almost as if he could read her thoughts. The bond between the two was undeniable, an unspoken understanding forged through trust, patience, and countless hours of practice. Spectators whispered excitedly. Cameras flashed. Reporters jotted down every detail, noting the extraordinary connection between and Max. Officers who had trained dogs for years stood amazed, witnessing a level of obedience and interpretation that seemed impossible. Gave another small signal, guiding Max to place the folder carefully on the bench beside the judge. The judge looked down at the documents, her eyes widening as she realized the significance. The evidence was clear, undeniable, and had been uncovered silently by a child guiding her dog. The courtroom buzzed with energy, the kind of suspense that held every person in rapt attention. Smother exhaled slowly, proud yet anxious. She knew the abilities of her daughter and Max, but seeing them in action in front of dozens of people, including a skeptical judge and seasoned lawyers, was overwhelming. Remain composed, her tiny hand poised, ready to signal Max for the next crucial task. Max, calm and alert, waited patiently, ready to act instantly. Whispers spread like wildfire. "How is this even possible?" one spectator asked. "It's a miracle," another whispered, eyes wide in disbelief. The judge, though astonished, regained her composure. She tapped her gavel lightly, calling for silence. "Order," she said firmly, though her curiosity and admiration were evident. "It appears we have an unusual, extraordinary situation developing." Smother smiled quietly, watching her daughter and Max perform flawlessly. The pair had turned a routine courtroom morning into an astonishing display of intelligence, trust, and teamwork. Raised her hand once more, the signal barely noticeable to anyone untrained in reading her gestures. Max responded instantly, heading toward a small envelope tucked behind a stack of legal pads. With careful precision, he nudged it forward, revealing a key document with vital information. The judge took it in her hands, scanning the contents. Her eyebrows rose in surprise, her lips parting slightly. The implications were profound. This small, silent act had uncovered evidence that could change the direction of the case entirely. The lawyer presenting the case froze mid-sentence, unsure whether to continue. Officers leaned forward, whispering urgently to each other. Spectators were captivated, leaning toward the front rows to get a better view of Max. The room was alive with awe and disbelief. Seated quietly, watched Max with an intensity beyond her years. Each subtle gesture, each minuscule motion, guided the dog with precision that seemed almost magical. The courtroom had become a theater of suspense, and was the unlikely director. By the time Max returned to his place beside, the judge, lawyers, and spectators alike were utterly astonished. No one had anticipated that a 3-year-old girl and her dog could take center stage in such a dramatic, pivotal way. His tiny hands rested calmly in her lap, her mission momentarily complete, but her eyes continued to scan the room. The audience had been drawn into a silent dialogue, a mesmerizing dance of gestures, obedience, and intelligence that transcended ordinary expectations. What began as an ordinary morning had become the first act in a courtroom drama, unlike anyone had ever witnessed. And in that moment it was clear, was no longer just a child in the courtroom. She was a guide, a key participant, and the center of attention for everyone present. Max, loyal and alert, remained her steadfast partner, ready for the next silent command that might once again astonish the entire room. The courtroom fell into an unusual silence, a quiet that seemed almost impossible in a place usually dominated by the sound of gavel strikes, shuffling papers, and hurried footsteps. Every eye was now locked on Max. The little girl's eyes were bright with focus, her small hand raised just slightly, signaling her loyal companion once again. Max's ears twitched at the barely noticeable gesture, his body responding instantly, muscles coiled with precision. It was a movement so subtle that anyone untrained might have missed it, but the results would be impossible to ignore. His mother gripped her daughter's shoulder, silently urging her to remain calm. She understood the bond her daughter shared with Max, a bond forged over countless hours of training, play, and mutual trust. But witnessing it in a courtroom, with so many witnesses and so much at stake, was nerve-wracking. However, appeared serene. Her concentration was absolute, her confidence unwavering. She had been in this partnership long enough to trust Max implicitly, and the dog, trained to respond to subtle cues, waited for her next signal. The prosecutor, attempting to regain control of the situation, cleared his throat. "Your Honor," he began, "I believe we should continue with the evidence." His voice faltered as he noticed Max subtly moving toward the defense's table. The dog's movements were deliberate, each step measured and precise. He nudged an envelope tucked under a stack of papers, then paused, glancing back at as if seeking confirmation. The judge's eyes narrowed, a mixture of confusion and fascination crossing her features. Lifted her tiny hand again, a motion so slight it could have been mistaken for an idle gesture. Max responded immediately. With careful, deliberate precision, he pawed at the envelope, sliding it across the floor until it reached S's lap. She reached down and held it briefly, her small fingers brushing the edge before placing it gently on the judge's bench. A hushed murmur rippled through the courtroom. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, unable to hide their amazement. Lawyers paused mid-argument, incredulous at the unfolding scene. The judge, her interest piqued, reached for the envelope. She opened it slowly, revealing documents that had been thought missing or overlooked entirely. The papers contained crucial information, a timeline of events, hidden annotations, and legal notes that altered the understanding of the case. Her eyes widened as she realized the significance. She adjusted her glasses, leaning forward, unable to conceal her astonishment. The courtroom had shifted from routine proceedings to a moment of extraordinary revelation, all orchestrated silently by a 3-year-old girl and her faithful dog. His mother exhaled quietly, proud yet anxious. She had always known her daughter was perceptive beyond her years, but this was beyond even her expectations. Max, alert and poised, remained at side, tail resting lightly on the floor. The dog had performed flawlessly, responding to the subtlest cues with uncanny precision. Officers whispered among themselves, some nodding in silent recognition of the rarity of what they were witnessing. This was not mere obedience. This was collaboration, intuition, and trust executed flawlessly under immense pressure. The defense attorney leaned forward, studying the documents now in the judge's hands. "Your Honor," he began, voice quivering slightly with disbelief, I don't believe anyone could have located these without." His sentence trailed off. He glanced then at Max, realizing that the child and her dog had become pivotal participants in the courtroom. Every professional present, from lawyers to bailiffs, officers to reporters, was witnessing something extraordinary. The first shock of a case dramatically transformed by an unlikely pair. Sensing the courtroom's gaze, raised her hand slightly again. This time, her gesture directed Max toward a small briefcase lying near the defense table, one that had gone unnoticed throughout the morning. Max approached with quiet confidence, nudging the briefcase just enough to reveal a small, hidden compartment underneath. His tiny fingers twitched imperceptibly, signaling him to extract its contents. Max carefully retrieved a sealed envelope and brought it forward, placing it gently on the judge's bench beside the other documents. Gasps filled the room. The evidence contained inside was significant, proof that could not only clarify the case but potentially change its outcome. The judge, usually calm and composed, adjusted her robes and leaned forward, scanning the documents with intense focus. She glanced briefly at awe apparent in her expression. "Young lady," she said softly, though her voice carried to the back of the room, "you've done something remarkable. Are you aware of what you've just uncovered?" Nodded faintly, her expression serious as if she understood the gravity of her actions. Max remained poised at her side, eyes locked on her tiny hand, ready for the next signal. The courtroom's energy had shifted completely. Spectators who had entered expecting a routine hearing were now witnesses to an unprecedented display of intelligence, coordination, and trust. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, cameras flashing to capture the extraordinary moment. Lawyers whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Officers exchanged looks, recognizing that what they were witnessing was rare, if not entirely unprecedented. A child had guided a trained police dog to uncover critical evidence with silent, subtle gestures that ordinary explanation. Confidence remained unshaken. She raised her hand slightly again, directing Max to move toward a small box near the witness stand. The dog approached carefully, nudging the box open to reveal a collection of notes, photographs, and legal memos previously hidden from view. The judge picked up each item in turn, her eyes widening as she read. The implications were enormous. Information that had eluded months of investigation and preparation had been revealed through the subtle teamwork of a little girl and her dog. Gasps of astonishment rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor, who had initially tried to regain control, stopped mid-sentence, clearly unable to continue until he processed what had occurred. The defense attorney looked equally stunned, shaking his head as he whispered to a colleague. Officers leaned forward in their seats, impressed not just by Max's training but by his rare insight and precision. Spectators whispered in disbelief, unable to hide their amazement. The courtroom had transformed from a routine venue of legal procedure into a stage for something extraordinary. His mother felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She had trained her daughter and Max together, but the intensity of the courtroom had made her nervous. Watching her daughter execute every silent gesture flawlessly, guiding Max to uncover evidence with astonishing accuracy, filled her with both pride and awe. His calm demeanor, coupled with Max's disciplined obedience, had created a synergy that left everyone in the room stunned. It was a reminder that age and size were no indicators of capability, and that trust, intelligence, and intuition could surpass even the most rigorous professional training. The judge finally looked up from the documents, her gaze softening as she regarded. "This is extraordinary," she said. "I have seen many things in this courtroom, but nothing quite like this. Your partnership with Max has revealed crucial evidence that might otherwise have been overlooked." His mother squeezed her hand gently, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." Lips curled into a small, confident smile, her eyes still focused on Max, ready to guide him if needed. The audience, now fully captivated, watched as raised her hand slightly once more, signaling Max to return to his position beside her. The dog obeyed flawlessly, tail wagging lightly, as if proud of the task he had accomplished. The courtroom had experienced its first shock, an unexpected revelation that transformed the hearing and captured the attention of every professional, officer, and spectator present. The energy in the room had shifted irreversibly. The focus was no longer just on the legal proceedings, but on the extraordinary collaboration between a tiny child and her loyal dog. As the murmurs of astonishment continued, remained calm, her tiny hands resting gently in her lap. Max sat beside her, ears alert, eyes fixed on her in anticipation of the next silent signal. The courtroom was no longer routine. It was a place of wonder, of disbelief, and of unexpected heroism. Had proven that intelligence, intuition, and courage were not limited by age. Together, she and Max had achieved something that would be remembered long after the gavel fell. And as the judge called for a brief recess, the audience knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, a first shock that would set the stage for even greater revelations to come. The courtroom remained silent, the kind of hush that carries weight, a combination of astonishment, curiosity, and barely contained excitement. Even the faint rustle of papers seemed amplified in the tense air. The judge leaned back slightly on her bench, her eyes fixed on. There was something in the little girl's calm, unwavering gaze that drew attention and explanation. She wasn't just a spectator, she was a participant, a guide, a force that had already revealed evidence overlooked by seasoned professionals. The judge's curiosity grew with every passing second. aware of the judge's watchful gaze, gave Max a subtle signal. Her fingers moved with the precision of someone older, directing the dog toward a small envelope tucked beneath the prosecution's table. Max obeyed instantly, his eyes never leaving his hand. With the gentlest nudge, he brought the envelope forward and placed it carefully on the judge's bench beside the documents already revealed. A soft murmur traveled through the courtroom as spectators leaned forward, realizing that the child and her dog were not finished. Each movement was deliberate, each gesture purposeful. The judge adjusted her glasses and picked up the envelope, glancing down at its contents. Her eyes widened as she recognized its significance. It contained handwritten notes, timelines, and crucial annotations that clarified key points in the case. No one had expected such a revelation, least of all from a 3-year-old girl and her dog. She looked at, her voice soft but carrying authority, "Young lady, do you understand the importance of what you've just done?" Nodded slightly, her expression serious and confident. She knew exactly what she had uncovered, and she trusted Max to continue assisting her as needed. The courtroom buzzed with excitement and disbelief. Lawyers leaned forward, whispering urgently among themselves. Officers exchanged astonished glances, some shaking their heads as if trying to grasp what they had just witnessed. Spectators murmured in awe, many craning their necks to see next subtle motion. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, cameras trained on the little girl and her dog. It was clear that the ordinary proceedings of a routine hearing had transformed into an extraordinary display of intelligence, intuition, and trust. Had become the center of attention, and Max her perfect, silent partner. His mother, seated nearby, clutched the little girl's hand, trying to contain her own excitement. She had trained to work with Max, but seeing the results in a formal courtroom was overwhelming. His tiny fingers twitched subtly, signaling Max to focus on another area near the witness stand. The dog moved with flawless precision, gently nudging a folder that had gone unnoticed by everyone else. The folder contained photographs, memos, and a collection of notes that illuminated a hidden aspect of the case. Every item revealed critical information, some of which could change the outcome entirely. The judge's expression shifted from curiosity to astonishment. She picked up the photographs, scanning each one carefully, noting the details that had been previously overlooked. Her eyes flicked too, admiration evident in the way she regarded the child. "This is remarkable," she whispered, mostly to herself. "I have never seen such precision, such intuition in anyone, let alone a child." Remained calm, serene even, her gaze steady on Max as she prepared to guide him further. Max, ever attentive, seemed to understand the importance of each silent command, waiting patiently for her next gesture. The courtroom energy had shifted completely. Where moments before there had been routine proceedings and the soft hum of whispers, now there was a collective sense of awe and anticipation. Spectators leaned forward, their eyes wide with curiosity, trying to predict what the child might do next. Lawyers and officers, equally captivated, found themselves caught between professional duty and personal amazement. His ability to communicate silently with Max had created a spectacle no one could ignore, a demonstration of connection, trust, and intelligence that transcended age and expectation. Twitched her fingers subtly once more, directing Max toward a small drawer beneath the defense table. The dog moved with deliberate care, pulling it open slightly to reveal another set of documents. Each action was precise, each motion meaningful. Max nudged the papers gently toward, who briefly examined them before placing them carefully on the judge's bench. The content revealed details critical to understanding the timeline of events, information that had eluded investigators and lawyers alike. Every person in the courtroom leaned closer, straining to comprehend the incredible display before them. The prosecutor, regaining some composure, spoke with a mixture of disbelief and urgency. "Your Honor, we must consider the implications of these documents." He paused, glancing at, "and the child who retrieved them." The judge did not respond immediately, her attention fixed on and Max. The courtroom seemed suspended in a delicate balance between law and wonder. Every movement by the girl and her dog commanded attention, creating suspense that left everyone on edge. His mother whispered quietly, her voice trembling slightly with pride. "You're doing so well, sweetheart," she murmured. His tiny hands twitched subtly, signaling Max once again. He moved swiftly, retrieving a small key that had fallen unnoticed behind a chair. The dog carried it carefully, placing it on the judge's bench. The key was a crucial piece of evidence, one that could unlock access to additional documents vital to the case. Gasps filled the room as the audience realized the significance. The child and her dog had not only discovered hidden materials, but had also maintained flawless composure under immense pressure. The judge's eyes softened as she observed silent communication with Max. Her voice, calm yet filled with wonder, addressed the courtroom. "Ladies, and what you are witnessing is extraordinary. This young girl has demonstrated insight, intelligence, and courage beyond her years, guiding a trained police dog to reveal critical evidence." The courtroom erupted in quiet murmurs of approval and amazement. Even seasoned officers, experienced in countless investigations, could not hide their astonishment. His actions had captured the attention of everyone present, and the ripple of admiration was palpable. Max returned to his position beside, tail resting lightly on the floor. His tiny fingers twitched, signaling him to stay alert but remain in place. The courtroom had become a theater of silent communication, a demonstration of extraordinary collaboration. Spectators whispered excitedly, some recording the scene on phones and cameras. Lawyers exchanged incredulous glances, acknowledging that the child and her dog had uncovered evidence that could not have been obtained through ordinary means. The judge, still examining the documents and key, shook her head slightly, her face reflecting both surprise and admiration. Sensing the moment, gave one final subtle gesture to Max. The dog responded instantly, moving toward a small envelope that had remained hidden under a pile of legal pads. He nudged it gently, bringing it forward and placing it on the judge's bench. The envelope contained written testimony, notes, and a sealed statement that revealed a critical witness account previously thought unavailable. The courtroom murmured in astonishment. Silent signals had guided Max to uncover not just documents, but the information that could decisively influence the case. The judge leaned forward, carefully examining the contents of the envelope. "Incredible," she whispered, mostly to herself. Her gaze turned too, a mixture of curiosity, respect, and wonder shining in her eyes. "Young lady, you and your dog have performed a remarkable feat. This court recognizes the precision, insight, and courage you have displayed." His mother smiled quietly, pride shining in her eyes. Herself remained composed, her focus unwavering, her connection with Max clear to everyone in the room. The courtroom's energy shifted fully from surprise to admiration. Spectators who had entered expecting a routine hearing were now witnesses to an extraordinary display of intelligence, trust, and silent collaboration. Lawyers, officers, and onlookers alike watched as, and Max demonstrated that age and size were irrelevant in the face of skill, intuition, and unwavering trust. The judge tapped her gavel lightly, calling for order, though her fascination with the scene was evident. His tiny hands rested calmly in her lap. Max sat beside her, alert but still, waiting for the next silent signal. The audience had experienced its second wave of shock, the first being the initial discovery of the documents, and now the realization that the child was orchestrating every action. The courtroom had transformed from a place of routine proceedings into a stage for something rare and remarkable. And Max had captured everyone's attention, leaving a lasting impression of intelligence, courage, and extraordinary teamwork. And in that moment, the judge understood fully that the little girl was not merely present in the courtroom. She was central to the unfolding events. Every eye in the room remained fixed on and her dog, anticipating the next move, awed by what they had already accomplished. The stage was set for revelations yet to come, and it was clear that the calm and precise actions of a 3-year-old and her loyal dog had permanently altered the dynamics of the courtroom. The courtroom had transformed. Where moments before there had been whispers and tense shuffling, now there was a charged anticipation, as if everyone present sensed that something unprecedented was unfolding. Sat quietly, small yet commanding attention with her calm demeanor. Her eyes, wide and observant, scanned the room, noting reactions and movements with astonishing perception. Max, alert at her side, mirrored her focus, ready to respond to the slightest gesture. Together, they were a team operating silently, seamlessly, and with a precision that captivated everyone in the room. Lawyers paused mid-argument as Max nudged a folder toward the judge. Tiny fingers twitched imperceptibly, directing him to place it carefully on the bench. The contents revealed information previously overlooked, emails, annotations, and receipts that clarified the sequence of events at the center of the case. Gasps echoed throughout the room. Spectators leaned forward, craning their necks, some whispering in disbelief. Even seasoned officers, accustomed to K-9 units and courtroom proceedings alike, exchanged astonished glances. It was not merely that a dog had moved objects. It was that a 3-year-old girl had orchestrated it all with silent gestures. The judge, adjusting her glasses, picked up the documents with deliberate care. Her expression softened, alternating between astonishment and admiration. "This is extraordinary," she whispered, mostly to herself. Then, in a voice clear and authoritative, she addressed the room. "Ladies, and it appears that we are witnessing something exceptional. This young girl and her dog have uncovered evidence critical to this case, evidence that might otherwise have remained hidden." Smother squeezed her daughter's hand, pride and awe shining in her eyes. The little girl, however, remained focused on Max, ready to guide him again if necessary. Max, sensing Sneck's signal, moved toward another overlooked item near the defense table. He nudged a stack of papers, revealing a small envelope. Fingers twitched subtly, directing him to extract it carefully and bring it to the judge. The audience collectively held their breath. Inside the envelope were photographs, legal notes, and a small key, items that connected pieces of the case no one had yet pieced together. The courtroom murmured in astonishment, whispers turning to audible gasps. Tiny gestures were rewriting the narrative of the case before everyone's eyes. The defense attorney, pale and bewildered, leaned forward. "Your Honor, is it possible that these items were hidden intentionally?" The judge looked at him, then at her, expression unreadable but filled with curiosity. "It is remarkable, certainly," she replied, her voice steady, though her eyes betrayed amazement. She examined the documents carefully, recognizing the significance of each. The courtroom's focus had shifted completely. The proceedings, once routine, were now secondary to the extraordinary collaboration between a child and her dog. Every eye remained on the small figure orchestrating the discovery of vital evidence. Smother whispered softly, almost in disbelief, "Your incredible sweetheart." His tiny hand twitched again, signaling Max to remain alert but in position. The dog, his movements smooth and controlled, a reflection of the trust and understanding he shared with. The courtroom energy was electric. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, reporters jotted down notes furiously, and officers nodded in quiet recognition of the skillful demonstration they were witnessing. And Max had captivated everyone, turning the ordinary courtroom into a theater of suspense and wonder. The prosecutor, struggling to regain composure, cleared his throat. "Your Honor, if I may," he began cautiously, "the evidence revealed by the child and her dog seems to indicate." His voice trailed as he realized the impact of the discovery. Every document, every photograph, every small piece of evidence uncovered by Max Under's direction was shifting the balance of the case. The courtroom had shifted from routine proceedings to a stage for an extraordinary display of intelligence, coordination, and silent communication. Raised her hand again, a motion so subtle it could have been missed entirely. Max, attuned to the slightest movement, moved toward a small filing cabinet near the corner of the room. He nudged open a drawer, revealing a set of additional documents. Eyes scanned the contents quickly, her expression focused and determined. With another subtle gesture, She directed Max to bring the items to the judge. Gasps echoed through the room as the documents were laid out carefully. They contained witness statements, timelines, and notes that clarified critical aspects of the case. The courtroom collectively realized that this small girl had become the pivotal force in the hearing. The judge leaned forward, examining the documents closely. "This changes everything," she murmured. Her voice, though calm, carried a mixture of disbelief and respect. She glanced at who remained composed, her tiny hands resting lightly in her lap, ready for the next signal. The courtroom was on edge, caught between astonishment and curiosity. Every individual present, from the most experienced lawyer to the officer, understood that they were witnessing something extraordinary. A young child guiding a trained police dog to reveal information crucial to justice. Spectators whispered excitedly. "I've never seen anything like this," one murmured. Cameras flashed as reporters documented the unprecedented events. Officers, some with decades of experience, nodded to each other in quiet recognition of the skill and trust on display. Twitched her fingers subtly once more, signaling Max to focus on a small box near the witness stand. The dog moved carefully, retrieving the box and placing it on the judge's bench. Inside were handwritten notes and additional evidence that tied multiple elements of the case together. The courtroom erupted in quiet astonishment, captivated by the seamless execution of the pair's silent communication. The judge, her expression softening with admiration, addressed the courtroom. "It appears that we have underestimated the capabilities of some of our youngest participants," she said. "This young girl and her dog have revealed critical information with precision, insight, and composure beyond their years. This court recognizes their contribution." Smother smiled proudly, tears of joy welling in her eyes. However, remained focused on Max, her small figure radiating quiet confidence. The dog, ever attentive, sat obediently beside her, ready for the next command. Lawyers whispered urgently among themselves, discussing the implications. The defense attorney shook his head, clearly astonished. "I've never seen anything like this," he muttered. "A child and a dog have uncovered evidence that experienced investigators missed." The prosecutor, equally stunned, glanced at Max, realizing that the balance of the case had shifted dramatically. Spectators leaned forward in anticipation, knowing that the unfolding events were extraordinary, perhaps even unprecedented in courtroom history. Twitched her fingers subtly one final time, signaling Max to remain alert but stay in position. The audience watched, captivated, as the pair completed their display of silent collaboration. The energy in the courtroom had shifted completely. Awe, curiosity, and admiration mingled in the air. What had begun as a routine hearing was now an extraordinary testament to intelligence, trust, and the extraordinary bond between a child and her dog. Every person present understood that they had witnessed something remarkable, something that would not be forgotten for years to come. Max settled beside, his tail brushing gently against the floor, signaling the end of their current task. His tiny hands rested in her lap, her gaze calm and confident. The judge, leaning back in her seat, studied the child with newfound respect. "It is clear," she said, addressing the courtroom, "that this young girl has demonstrated insight, composure, and capability beyond her years. This court will take into account the extraordinary circumstances and evidence she has helped reveal." The courtroom murmured with quiet agreement, a collective recognition of the remarkable display they had just witnessed. Smother whispered softly, "You did it, sweetheart." His lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. She glanced down at Max, who looked back at her with alert eyes, a silent acknowledgement of their teamwork. The courtroom had turned in their favor, not because of argument or strategy, but because of trust, intuition, and the quiet brilliance of a child and her loyal dog. The spectators, now fully captivated, continued to whisper among themselves. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, capturing every detail for what would undoubtedly become a story told far beyond the walls of the courtroom. Officers nodded to each other, recognizing the rarity of what they had witnessed. had transformed the ordinary proceedings into something extraordinary, a testament to intelligence, courage, and teamwork that transcended age and expectation. And as the gavel struck to call a brief recess, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Everyone present understood that the events of this day, led by a 3-year-old girl and her extraordinary dog, had shifted not only the direction of the case but also the attention and awe of everyone in the room. The stage was set for even greater revelations, and the audience waited, eager and breathless, for what Max would accomplish next. The courtroom sat in a tense hush during the brief recess, the kind of silence that made even the faintest whisper seem amplified. Spectators and lawyers alike leaned forward in their seats, their eyes fixed on Max. Though they had paused, his tiny fingers twitched ever so slightly, signaling Max to remain alert. The dog sat patiently, tail resting lightly on the floor, ears perked as if he sensed the gravity of what was to come. Everyone could feel that the pair's next move would be pivotal, a revelation that could shift the entire course of the hearing. His mother sat close, holding her daughter's hand tightly, pride mixed with nervous tension, knowing that the little girl and her dog had already exceeded anyone's expectations. "You're amazing," she whispered softly, nodded faintly, her focus unwavering. She understood the importance of the task ahead. The documents, notes, and envelopes they had already revealed were only the beginning. His intuition told her that the most critical evidence, the piece that would tie the entire case together, was still hidden somewhere in the courtroom. Max shifted slightly on signal, moving toward the area near the defense attorney's table. He paused, pawing gently at a small, overlooked folder. Fingers twitched subtly, guiding him with precision. The courtroom spectators leaned forward, curiosity rippling through the room. Lawyers whispered urgently, some craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the silent coordination. The judge watched intently, a mixture of admiration and astonishment evident in her expression. It was clear that this was no ordinary display. This was a child orchestrating the discovery of critical evidence with a trained dog as her partner. Max nudged the folder toward, who picked it up carefully. She scanned its contents quickly, her eyes widening slightly in recognition. Inside were statements, photographs, and handwritten notes that revealed the missing link in the case, a testimony that directly contradicted a previously accepted version of events. Small hands moved deftly, placing the folder on the judge's bench. Gasps filled the courtroom. The audience leaned forward, the murmurs escalating to audible astonishment. It was the moment they had all been waiting for, the crucial revelation that could change the outcome entirely. The judge examined the folder with careful attention, her brows knitting together as she processed the information. She looked at, her voice steady but filled with amazement. "Young lady, do you realize the importance of what you have just uncovered?" Nodded faintly, her expression calm yet serious. Max sat beside her, ears perked and eyes fixed on her small hand, waiting for the next subtle signal. Every movement was precise, deliberate, and executed flawlessly. The courtroom energy had reached a peak. Spectators, officers, and lawyers alike were captivated, unsure whether to watch, gasp, or whisper. The prosecutor, his voice tinged with disbelief, cleared his throat. "Your Honor, these documents, he trailed off, unable to finish. The evidence that Max had revealed directly contradicted critical points of his case. The courtroom had shifted from routine legal proceedings to a stage of extraordinary revelation. Lawyers whispered to each other, officers leaned in, and spectators murmured, their attention riveted. The magnitude of the discovery was undeniable. The missing link in the case had been silently uncovered by a child guiding a dog. His mother exhaled quietly, a mix of pride and relief washing over her. She knew that Max was trained for precise actions, but witnessing him follow silent cues with such accuracy in a courtroom filled her with awe. His tiny hand twitched again, signaling Max to move toward another overlooked folder near the prosecution's table. The dog obeyed instantly, nudging the folder carefully toward. She examined the contents and placed them beside the previous documents on the judge's bench. The documents included additional evidence, witness notes, and a small audio recording that corroborated the previously hidden testimony. The judge adjusted her glasses, reviewing the audio recording carefully. Her eyes widened as she recognized its significance. "This is extraordinary," she whispered. Her voice, though calm, carried the weight of astonishment. The courtroom murmured, spectators exchanging incredulous glances. Lawyers paused mid-discussion, officers leaned forward, and even the reporters who had seen many remarkable things seemed stunned. And Max had turned a routine courtroom session into an unprecedented display of intelligence, trust, and precision. Twitched her fingers subtly once more, directing Max to move toward a small envelope tucked beneath a chair. He nudged it forward carefully and placed it on the judge's bench. Inside was the final piece of the puzzle, a signed statement from a previously reluctant witness, whose account clarified critical inconsistencies and completed the picture of the case. The courtroom erupted in whispers of amazement. Spectators leaned forward, eager to witness the implications of the revelation. Tiny gestures had guided Max to uncover the evidence that had eluded lawyers, investigators, and officers alike. The judge picked up the documents, examining them carefully. "Ladies and," she said, her voice calm but authoritative, "we are witnessing something truly extraordinary. A 3-year-old child, through silent communication with a trained dog, has uncovered evidence that has eluded months of investigation." Gasps echoed throughout the room. The courtroom had shifted completely, was no longer just a spectator. She had become central to the proceedings, guiding the course of the hearing with intelligence and composure beyond her years. Max returned to his position beside, tail brushing lightly against the floor. The little girl's tiny hands rested in her lap, her gaze calm and focused. The courtroom's energy had transformed from awe to quiet exhilaration. Spectators whispered in disbelief, reporters scribbled furiously, and officers exchanged impressed nods. And Max had revealed critical evidence silently and precisely, demonstrating a level of coordination, trust, and understanding that seemed almost miraculous. The defense attorney, now visibly shaken, leaned toward the prosecutor. I've never seen anything like this," he whispered. "A child and a dog have essentially rewritten the case before our eyes." The prosecutor, equally stunned, nodded slowly. The courtroom had become a stage for an extraordinary event, and everyone present understood the magnitude of what had just occurred. Silent communication with Max had not only revealed hidden evidence but had shifted the balance of power in the courtroom. His mother watched with pride, tears welling in her eyes. She had always known that her daughter was capable of extraordinary things, but seeing her operate with such composure and intelligence under immense pressure was overwhelming. Twitched her fingers again, signaling Max to remain alert but in place. The audience watched in rapt attention, captivated by the quiet brilliance of a child and her dog. Max, ever obedient and intelligent, stayed by his side, ready for any additional commands. The judge leaned back slightly, taking a deep breath as she processed the implications of the evidence. "It is clear," she said, addressing the courtroom, "that this young girl has demonstrated courage, intelligence, and precision beyond her years. Her guidance of a trained dog has uncovered evidence crucial to this case, evidence that could not have been obtained through ordinary means. This court acknowledges the extraordinary contribution of and Max." The courtroom erupted in quiet applause, admiration, and awe. His mother whispered softly, "You've done it, sweetheart." His lips curled into a small, confident smile. She glanced down at Max, who looked back at her with alert, intelligent eyes, a silent acknowledgement of their teamwork. The courtroom, now fully captivated, continued to watch as, and Max sat calmly, the center of attention and the unlikely heroes of the proceedings. The spectators, lawyers, and officers had all realized that they were witnessing something extraordinary. A child and her dog performing an act of intelligence, precision, and trust that ordinary expectations had uncovered the final piece of the puzzle, revealing the truth and ensuring that justice could proceed based on complete and accurate evidence. The courtroom had been transformed, not by argument or strategy, but by intuition, patience, and a silent partnership that was both rare and remarkable. As the gavel struck for a brief recess, the audience understood that the most critical revelations had been made, had orchestrated a silent symphony of discovery with Max, uncovering evidence that could determine the outcome of the case. The judge, lawyers, officers, and spectators alike were left in awe of the small girl and her extraordinary companion, anticipating the final developments that would follow the groundbreaking evidence they had revealed. The courtroom had transformed into a space of awe, anticipation, and barely contained excitement. Every person present, lawyers, officers, reporters, and spectators, was fixated on and Max. What had begun as a routine hearing had become an extraordinary display of intelligence, trust, and silent communication. Sat poised on her chair, tiny fingers resting lightly in her lap, eyes bright and observant. Max remained at her side, ears alert, muscles coiled in quiet readiness, fully attuned to the smallest gesture from the girl. The judge, still holding the crucial evidence uncovered by Max, looked across the courtroom, her expression a mixture of astonishment and admiration. "Ladies and," she said, her voice carrying authority and calm, "the evidence presented today has been extraordinary. Not only has it clarified key points in this case, but it has been uncovered in a manner that is, quite frankly, unprecedented." A hush fell over the courtroom. Every person present understood the magnitude of the moment. And Max had changed the proceedings fundamentally, and the climax was near. His mother leaned forward, gripping her daughter's hand tightly. Pride and nervous tension mixed in her chest. She had always known was perceptive beyond her years, but watching her operate under the scrutiny and pressure of a courtroom was unlike anything she had imagined. His tiny fingers twitched subtly, signaling Max to approach the witness stand. The dog moved gracefully, nudging aside folders and notes to retrieve a small envelope. His hands guided him with precise motions, and Max responded instantly, delivering it to the judge. The judge examined the envelope carefully. Inside was a handwritten confession from a key witness who had initially remained silent. The statement confirmed the sequence of events, clarified inconsistencies, and corroborated the previously uncovered evidence. Gasps of astonishment filled the room. Lawyers whispered urgently among themselves, spectators leaned forward, and even officers were visibly impressed. The courtroom had shifted once more, from awe to revelation, from curiosity to the thrill of understanding. Had guided Max to deliver the final piece of the puzzle, the information that could decide the outcome of the case. The prosecutor, pale and shaken, glanced at the defense attorney. Both men were clearly taken aback by the turn of events. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said cautiously, "the evidence revealed by the child and her dog, it cannot be ignored. It is clear, credible, and pivotal to understanding the case fully." His voice carried a mixture of disbelief and reluctant admiration. The judge nodded slowly, acknowledging the significance of the statement. Every person in the courtroom realized that Max were no longer mere participants. They were the catalysts for justice. His mother whispered softly, tears brimming in her eyes. "Your incredible sweetheart," smiled faintly, her gaze steady on Max. The dog sat attentively beside her, tail brushing the floor, eyes bright with intelligence and trust. The courtroom watched in rapt attention, captivated by the quiet brilliance of the pair. Tiny gestures had guided Max to uncover evidence that would have otherwise remained hidden, ensuring the truth emerged clearly and unequivocally. The judge adjusted her glasses, scanning the documents and confession carefully. She looked across the courtroom, her voice calm but filled with authority. "It is evident that the young girl's guidance of her dog has led to the discovery of crucial evidence. This court recognizes the remarkable coordination, intelligence, and insight demonstrated by her companion." A murmur of approval swept through the audience. Spectators whispered among themselves, reporters scribbled rapidly, and officers exchanged impressed nods. Had become the center of the courtroom, her small presence commanding attention and respect. Max, sensing Sneck's signal, moved toward a small cabinet near the back of the courtroom. With delicate precision, He nudged open a drawer, revealing a set of additional notes. His tiny fingers twitched subtly, signaling him to retrieve them carefully and bring them to the judge. The notes contained corroborating timelines and supporting statements from witnesses who had previously been hesitant to come forward. Gasps and whispers filled the room. The courtroom was alive with astonishment and admiration. And Max had orchestrated a chain of discovery that was nothing short of miraculous. The defense attorney, now leaning forward in disbelief, whispered urgently to his colleague, We've never seen anything like this. A child and a dog, they've essentially taken control of the courtroom." The prosecutor nodded, his face pale, realizing that the balance of the case had shifted dramatically. Every person present was aware that the extraordinary duo had uncovered the truth, the final revelations that clarified critical aspects of the proceedings. Silent coordination with Max had not only produced evidence, but had ensured justice could be served accurately. The judge tapped her gavel lightly, calling for attention. "Order," she said firmly. "The evidence presented today by and her dog Max has been thorough, precise, and critical to understanding the case. This court acknowledges their extraordinary contribution and the role it has played in clarifying facts that were previously uncertain." A ripple of awe swept through the courtroom. Spectators leaned forward, some snapping photos, others whispering in disbelief. And Max had become the heroes of the moment, the unlikely pair who had shifted the tide of justice through intelligence, trust, and unwavering teamwork. Twitched her fingers subtly once more, signaling Max to remain attentive but in place. The dog obeyed flawlessly, sitting calmly beside her. The courtroom's energy was electric, a mixture of admiration, tension, and awe. Every individual present, from the judge to the youngest spectator, understood that they had witnessed something rare, extraordinary, and unforgettable. And Max had performed an act that transcended age, size, and expectation. Their silent communication had uncovered the truth and ensured that justice could proceed on a solid foundation. The final documents and statements were laid out on the judge's bench, and the judge's eyes softened as she addressed the courtroom. "It is clear that this young girl and her dog have revealed evidence pivotal to this case. Their actions have ensured clarity, fairness, and justice. I commend for her intelligence, composure, and courage, and I acknowledge Max for his loyalty, training, and exceptional responsiveness." The courtroom erupted in quiet applause, a mix of astonishment and respect. His mother hugged her tightly, tears of pride streaming down her face. Though proud, remained focused on Max. The dog's eyes met hers, a silent acknowledgement of the teamwork and trust that had made the day possible. The courtroom, once tense and skeptical, now recognized the extraordinary partnership between a child and her dog. Lawyers exchanged incredulous glances, reporters scribbled furiously, and officers nodded quietly, impressed by the precision and intelligence displayed. Had not only uncovered critical evidence, but had demonstrated courage, focus, and insight far beyond her years. The judge raised her gavel, calling the courtroom to order once more. "This hearing has demonstrated the importance of attention to detail, intelligence, and collaboration. Thanks to and Max, this court now has the clarity necessary to proceed fairly and accurately. Let it be noted that their contribution has been extraordinary." A ripple of acknowledgement passed through the courtroom. Spectators, lawyers, and officers alike were still absorbing the magnitude of what had occurred. His role in the proceedings had shifted from observer to hero, and Max had proven himself an exceptional partner. His mother whispered again, "You did it, sweetheart," smiled faintly, glancing down at Max, who wagged his tail lightly, as if proud of the accomplishment. The courtroom remained captivated, reflecting on the remarkable display they had just witnessed. A 3-year-old child and her trained dog had orchestrated a series of discoveries that revealed the truth, clarified critical evidence, and ensured that justice could proceed fairly. It was a moment that no one present would ever forget. And as the judge prepared to continue with the final procedural matters, the courtroom held its collective breath. The extraordinary events of the morning had culminated in a climax of revelation, awe, and admiration. And Max, the unlikely heroes of the day, had demonstrated that intelligence, trust, courage, and precision could come in the smallest packages, changing the course of events and capturing the hearts of everyone in the room. The courtroom, still humming with disbelief and admiration, gradually settled into a quiet, reflective atmosphere. The extraordinary events of the day had left every person present in awe. Lawyers, officers, spectators, and reporters alike were still processing what had occurred. A 3-year-old girl and her loyal dog had uncovered evidence that seasoned professionals had missed. Sat calmly, her small hands folded in her lap, while Max remained alert at her side, his eyes bright and intelligent, ever ready to respond to her slightest gesture. The judge, her gaze softening, leaned forward on the bench and addressed the room. This court has witnessed a remarkable display of intelligence, courage, and collaboration, and Max have uncovered evidence critical to this case, and their efforts have ensured that justice can proceed with clarity and fairness. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. The courtroom, usually a place of formality and procedure, was now a space of shared wonder and admiration. His mother, sitting nearby, felt tears of pride welling in her eyes. She had known that was capable of extraordinary things, but seeing her perform flawlessly under the immense pressure of a courtroom was beyond her expectations. She reached over and gently squeezed his hand. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, responded with a small smile, glancing at Max. The dog's tail wagged gently, as if acknowledging the shared pride and accomplishment. Lawyers on both sides adjusted in their seats, still stunned by the turn of events. The defense attorney leaned toward the prosecutor and whispered, "I can't believe what we've just witnessed. A child and a dog, uncovering evidence we've been trying to find for months." The prosecutor nodded, his face pale, realizing that the balance of the case had been irrevocably altered. His actions had not only revealed critical documents, but had also demonstrated remarkable poise, precision, and insight beyond her years. The judge tapped her gavel lightly to restore order. "We will now proceed with the final review of evidence. Thanks to Max, the court has access to all the documents and statements necessary to make a fair and informed decision. Let it be noted that their contribution has been extraordinary." Gasps and murmurs of approval filled the room. Spectators whispered among themselves, some snapping photographs, others jotting down notes, all captivated by the rare display they had witnessed. Twitched her fingers subtly, signaling Max to remain in position but alert. The dog obeyed instantly, a testament to the extraordinary bond and trust shared between them. His tiny gestures had guided Max through a series of discoveries that culminated in the crucial revelation of evidence, changing the trajectory of the case entirely. Every person present understood that they were witnessing history in the making, a child and her dog ensuring justice through intelligence, collaboration, and unwavering focus. As the judge reviewed the evidence, she addressed directly, "Young lady, it is clear that your insight, courage, and precise communication with Max have been invaluable. The court thanks you for your extraordinary contribution." His mother beamed, her chest swelling with pride, responded with a shy nod, her eyes briefly meeting the judge's before returning to Max. The dog's alert stance and attentive gaze reflected the mutual understanding and trust that had guided them through the morning's events. Spectators, still captivated, whispered among themselves, "Did you see that? A child guiding a dog to uncover evidence," one murmured. Cameras flashed as reporters documented the scene. Officers, some of whom had witnessed countless cases, nodded in quiet recognition of the skill, trust, and intelligence displayed by Max. It was clear that the courtroom's routine proceedings had been transformed into a moment of extraordinary achievement, one that would be remembered for years to come. The defense attorney, still astonished, spoke quietly to his client. "We may not fully understand how it happened, but it's clear that the evidence is credible and pivotal. That child, she's remarkable." The prosecutor, likewise, leaned back in his chair, reflecting on the unprecedented events. Even the most experienced professionals recognized that what had occurred was beyond ordinary expectation, and Max had orchestrated a sequence of discoveries with precision, intelligence, and calm composure that belief. His mother whispered again, softly brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "You did it. You helped reveal the truth." His tiny fingers twitched slightly in response, signaling Max to relax beside her. The dog's tail wagged gently, a silent acknowledgement of the shared success and the trust that had guided them through the extraordinary morning. The courtroom remained captivated, witnessing the quiet triumph of a child and her loyal companion. The judge called the attorneys forward for closing statements, now armed with the complete and accurate evidence. Each lawyer proceeded carefully, the gravity of the situation apparent in their voices. The courtroom's energy had shifted. Anticipation mingled with admiration as everyone waited to see how the evidence, uncovered by Max, would shape the final outcome. The pair's contributions had not only clarified the facts, but had ensured that justice would be served with precision and fairness. As the hearing concluded, the judge addressed the court once more. "It is evident that Max have played a central role in ensuring the truth has been revealed. Their extraordinary collaboration has set a standard that this court will remember. Let it be noted for the record that their contribution has been exceptional and invaluable." A wave of applause swept through the room. Spectators clapped softly, lawyers nodded in acknowledgement, and officers exchanged impressed glances. His mother hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face, while looked down at Max, her small smile radiating pride and calm confidence. The courtroom slowly emptied, though the impact of the events lingered. Reporters lingered to document the story, whispering about the remarkable display of intelligence and trust. Lawyers reflected on the unusual yet undeniable impact of Max. Officers discussed the precision and composure of the pair, acknowledging that it was a rare and extraordinary event. Every person present had witnessed something unprecedented, a child and her dog guiding the course of justice with silent, precise communication. Outside the courtroom, and her mother were met with congratulations and admiration. Reporters captured photographs, while officers quietly nodded in respect. Remain composed, small hands resting in her lap, her gaze bright and observant. Max, ever attentive, stayed at her side, his demeanor calm yet alert. The duo had completed their extraordinary task, uncovering the evidence that had ensured justice could proceed accurately and fairly. His mother knelt beside her, whispering words of pride. "You've done something incredible today. You and Max have helped reveal the truth." His lips curled into a small, satisfied smile, and she gave Max a gentle pat on the head. The dog wagged his tail lightly, acknowledging the completion of their mission. Together, they had achieved something remarkable, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had witnessed it. The judge's words echoed in the hearts of those present, a recognition of courage, intelligence, and trust that transcended age and expectation. Had proven that even the smallest among us could make a profound difference, and Max had demonstrated that loyalty, training, and attentiveness could amplify that impact. The courtroom, once filled with tension and skepticism, had been transformed into a space of admiration and inspiration. As the day ended and Max walked out of the courtroom together, small hands clasped with her mother, Max trotting faithfully by her side. Reporters and spectators watched, knowing they had witnessed something extraordinary. The little girl and her dog had not only uncovered crucial evidence, but had shown the world that intelligence, courage, and trust could come in the most unexpected forms. Their story would be told, remembered, and celebrated as a testament to the remarkable partnership between a child and her loyal dog. And as looked down at Max, her eyes shining with pride and quiet triumph, she knew that together they had achieved something unforgettable, a perfect example of teamwork, intuition, and unwavering trust. The courtroom's astonishment had turned into admiration, the suspense into recognition, and the ordinary into something truly extraordinary. Justice had been served, not only through the evidence uncovered but through the silent, precise brilliance of a 3-year-old girl and her extraordinary companion.